Right, how's it going, everybody? I wanted to touch upon my experiences in Riyadh season and the Ring Magazine events that have recently happened. I was lucky enough to attend the Beterbiev Bivol fight week, the Fury Usyk fight week, and the launch of the Ring Magazine in Riyadh and the Ring Magazine event in London. Now, these are the events with those legendary pictures of all of the fighters. And as someone that was able to go there, you got complete access. It was unbelievable as a boxing fan. But my experiences out in Riyadh for the first two times were some of the best weeks of my life. So starting off with Riyadh Fight Week, I'm going to kind of mingle the two. I went to Saudi Arabia the first time for Beterbiev Bivol 1. A friend of mine, I've got to say a big shout out to Wally Downs, who has been key in getting me over to Riyadh and has been extremely helpful. Good friend of mine. And I was lucky enough to get out there. Now, for me, this is a dream come true. That fight, Beterbiev Bivol 1, it was the best fight that could be made in boxing. And as a die-hard boxing fan, it was one that I had to see live. The media stuff all happens in the evening. You go over to the fighters' hotels. They normally stay at the Hilton, and lots of the media are waiting around for the media bus to take you to whatever's happening in the evening. The press conference, the weigh-in, the pre-fight workout, all of that stuff. But for my personal experiences, I was able to sit down and have a chat with Teddy Atlas, a one-to-one chat. Now, I've got to know Teddy, I got to know Teddy's son especially well. And I've got to say, Teddy Atlas Sr. is one of my idols. Now, in my opinion, the mainstream media massively undersell boxing history. It's just not talked about. The great fighters of yesteryear, your likes of Henry Armstrong, your Harry Grebs and your Sam Langfords. But Teddy Atlas is a one of a kind in his knowledge of the sport, and the fact that he still talks about these fighters and gives them their due props. So to be able to sit down and just have a chat with Teddy was phenomenal. And then he comes over to me, and I obviously introduce myself, have a chat with him and just say, look, I just want to talk to you about these old school great fighters. And we sit down, I set the camera up, and we're going for about 50 minutes, non-stop. And we're going into the likes of Harry Greb, Ezra Charles, Sugar Ray Robinson, Benny Leonard, all of these great fighters in absolutely insane detail. You can watch that video, it is on my YouTube channel. And like, this is a dream for me because this is my idol right here. This is the guy that, you know, the modern day Burt Sugar. And he gives me 50 minutes and then we stop, finish up recording solely because the phone was going to die, the phone I was filming it on. And he's done, by that point, 2 back-to-back interviews for an hour and a half. And I say, look, Teddy, thank you so much. And we're having a chat for like 5-10 minutes. He's given me his time even after the camera's rolling. And then when we're done, he sits down and gives another interview for another 45 minutes. The same energy throughout that entire time. So to see that up close, just what he puts into boxing is phenomenal. He's one of a kind, as I say. And yeah, it's just to be at these events and to meet those kinds of people that live and breathe boxing, and they've given so much to boxing. So I got a chat with Teddy. I was also able to sit down with Bob Arum, who has been in the game since the 1960s. I believe his first fight was Muhammad Ali versus George Chuvalo. George Chuvalo had that all-time great chin, and he's been working with top fighters ever since. You know, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, Manny Pacquiao, Lomachenko, Naoya Inoue, so many, Oscar, Floyd. So many great fighters and so many stories. I also was able to get an interview with Carl Froch, who's one of my favourite fighters, and his YouTube channel is blowing up crazy now, and he's starting to get the recognition I felt he always lacked. I always rated Froch. I think he's one of the greatest British fighters of all time. His resume is absolutely insane. Like, you know, when he fought Jermaine Taylor, Jean Pascal, Mikkel Kessler twice, Andre Ward, George Groves twice, Durrell, so many top fighters Froch stepped into the ring with back-to-back. Man, some of the fights, the Pascal fight, the Butte fight, which was a really risky fight, the Jean Pascal fight, the Jermaine Taylor comeback, the George Groves fights. So anyway, back to the point. Got an interview with Froch, but, you know, the standout for me, now, this isn't boxing related, but I love football. I obviously love boxing. Anyone that follows my page or my own boxing career knows I love boxing. But my favourite sport to watch is snooker. I love snooker. Now, you might find that a little bit boring, but for me, snooker's crazy. I love it. and I play every week, and I know how difficult it is, and it's one of the most mentally draining sports. It's so hard. And for me, I genuinely think the greatest sportsman Britain's ever produced is Ronnie O'Sullivan. He's my idol, and he is obviously out there doing the snooker competition. So me and my friend Adam, who looked after me when I was out there, big shout out to Adam, we went and watched Ronnie, and we were in his academy. And I got to meet O'Sullivan and have a little chat with him at a media event. He was really cool, really nice. But I only got about a minute, you know, he was busy, and mate, I was made up by that. I'd met my idol. I'm buzzing, you know. I couldn't ask for any more than that. A couple of days later, the fight day, the Fury Usyk fight day, I went to the Mike Tyson boxing gym, the famous Mike Tyson boxing gym out there, and watched one of Teddy Atlas's seminars. So a massive thank you to Teddy Atlas and his son for inviting me to that. And that was really cool, just to see one of the great trainers and boxing minds up close teaching. And then we left. And we're standing outside, me, Adam, Teddy and his son. And then this guy just comes walking right past, just one person in, a whole empty car park. And it was Ronnie O'Sullivan. And as a massive snooker fan, I was like, oh wow, like Ronnie's coming over. And he came over with his son, Ronnie Jr., and his camera guy, Joe, really cool guy. And he just started chatting with us about boxing. And I never realised, I'd seen him at the fights, but I never realised how much of a massive boxing fan O'Sullivan is. And he actually comes from a fighting family. His grandfather, his grandfather's brother, I think, I'm not sure, I believe it's Danny O'Sullivan and Mickey O'Sullivan, off the top of my head. But one of them fought for a world title. But that was really cool. We was chatting with him for probably about 10 minutes. And I said to O'Sullivan, you know, listen, you really love your boxing. I'd love to get an interview with you. And he couldn't have been kinder. And as he left, the guy said, head over to Ronnie's academy. You can do your interview there. So I was in the academy anyway. Me, Russ Amber, the guy who was in Usyk's corner, another one of the great boxing people, owns these gloves here, the best brand in boxing in my opinion, Rival, who's a massive snooker fan. I played Russ over a few frames of snooker and just talked great fights. And Ronnie sat down and he's about to practice, so I didn't want to take much of his time. Was about to set the camera up, and he goes, "Shall I hit some balls?" And I'm like, yeah, mate, I would love to see that. He sets the balls up, mate, he couldn't have been kinder. And we ended up playing 3 frames of snooker with Ronnie O'Sullivan for an hour. I filmed 20 minutes of it, but to be honest with you, I just wanted to be in the moment and enjoy the frames. Me and Adam played. We lost 3-0, but I did hit a break of 6, which I was absolutely chuffed with. And yeah, we talked boxing for a good hour. And you can check the video out there with O'Sullivan talking boxing. It's on my page. That was just an unbelievable experience to be able to do that. And then we went to the fight, and the fight was unbelievable. You know, the whole experience there. The Beterbiev-Bivol fight, and the first time I was there, I was ringside and go up to Michael Buffer and talk to Michael Buffer just briefly before he did his thing, is let's get ready to rumble. You know, surreal experience. The Beterbiev-Bivol fight was, I mean, that was a close fight. Watching it live from the ringside, what stood out to me was how suffocating Beterbiev's pressure is, but also how efficient Bivol's footwork was. Now, I'll be honest, from ringside, and everyone I've spoken to ringside, reckons Bivol won that fight. Now, I thought Bivol won that fight from first glance, watching it, from probably 5 rows behind. And one of the things that I sort of heard from people who were watching it on the telly was, oh, Bivol was moving too much. But being there, he didn't waste a single step. Trust me, that pressure was so suffocating. And another thing I noticed as well is, Artur Beterbiev never loads up. He never throws a single hard punch. All of his punches are smooth and relaxed, and he just never stops working. Now, when I got home and I watched the fight the next day, it's funny, I actually gave it to Artur Beterbiev by a round, but there were about 4 swing rounds. So I'm really interested in this rematch because I genuinely could see that fight going either way, as I could see the first fight going either way. Anyway, moving on. The Ring Magazine events. Now, this was after the press conference of Fury Usyk. We were at the venue, I can't remember what it was called. And this was when they done that 11-minute face-off. And trust me, you could see that on the camera. But when you were there, you couldn't see a thing. Every cameraman in the building was standing on chairs to get to the front. So all I could see was a bunch of cameramen fighting to get to the front of the stage for 11 minutes. But shortly after that, we were told there's going to be an event. Lots of boxing legends are going to be there. It's the Ring Magazine launch. And this was out in Saudi Arabia. So to go to this event was an honor and a privilege. So I'd heard it was a red carpet and we were getting lots of great fighters to go to the red carpet. So I headed over, not really sure what to expect. And I saw Francis Ngannou just standing there. And I was like, whoa, you know. But the red carpet was empty other than that. And I didn't really know who was going to be coming in. So I noticed pretty soon, well, I realised pretty quickly that I could head in to the main event, you know, this main ballroom. So I had my pass, I went in, and oh my God, I was just blown away by what I witnessed in there. It was just this little bit of a red carpet section where fighters would come in and do interviews, and then you just went into this room and just everyone around it. Now, when I say everyone, I mean you could literally go up to anyone and have a chat with them. Just wandering around the room, you were surrounded by greatness. I remember going up to Darren Barker, who, you know, he was actually my idol growing up. He's the first fighter I ever watched. But I've become friends with Darren Barker over the years now. And just saying, how mad is that? And he's like, oh, Dan, it's unbelievable. Look, Roberto Duran's there. And Duran was the one guy I wanted to meet the most. And, you know, this is, in my opinion, undeniably the greatest fighter alive today. In the top 10 of all time. Potentially even in the top 5 of all time. And he was just sitting there, just chilling, you know, on his own with his family, you know. And I introduced myself, and man, he couldn't have been cooler. His kids couldn't have been cooler. They were translating for me. But Duran speaks pretty good English, and he understands what you're saying too. And, you know, I asked him, I said, you know, you're inside fighting, the Carlos Palomino fight, moving his hands. Tell me about that. And he was showing me all his tricks. And I showed him a video in which I'm going to put up on the screen now, in which some of the tricks I've learned from Roberto Duran. I said to him, I was like, Iron Barkley, you started off as a featherweight and you beat the future light heavyweight champion of the world. How did you do that? And he broke down how he beat Barkley for me, just, you know, with the subtle little tricks he's done. And in my opinion, one of the most underrated victories of Duran's career is in 1970, before he even boxed Ken Buchanan. He beat Ernesto Marcel, who would go on to be the featherweight champion of the world, which means that Duran beat champions from featherweight in Marcel to light heavyweight in Barkley, which is 9 divisions apart. And I said to him, no one talks about that fight. Ernesto Marcel was one of the great Panamanian fighters. And we started talking about, you know, the likes of Ernesto Marcel, Eusebio Pedrosa, so many of those great Panamanian fighters that go underrated. Hilario Zapata, there's so many. And I was buzzing, man. I'd been with Duran for like 3-4 minutes here. I'm like, right, thank you. His kids are really cool. I was chatting with them and I was like, right, thank you so much. I really, it's great to meet you. I'm going to leave you alone now because I don't want to take too much of your time. So I sort of turn around and he gives me a gentle little punch on the arm. I turn around and he keeps talking about the subject. So I'm like, oh, Duran's down to chat. So yeah, I stayed with him for another couple of minutes and I tell you what, he couldn't have been cooler, man. Really cool. That was just a standout for me because Duran is my idol, along with Golovkin, who unfortunately wasn't at the event. But oh man, to meet Golovkin would be unreal. But you know, I bumped into Teddy again. Janabek, the fantastic middleweight champion of the world. Had a really good chat with Froch at both of the events. Yeah, went up to Lennox Lewis and asked him who his greatest heavyweights of all time were. Had a little chat with Bevo about his footwork. And then I bumped into, and I also saw Vladimir Klitschko, who I'd met before. And I reminded him of the time we'd met. We were on an island where I was teaching boxing. And he was talking about potential comeback and the Usyk fight. That was really cool. And I said, look, I'll take a picture of her. He just grabbed my phone and taken the picture himself. And yeah, there were just so many. Opataya, Jai Opataya, who I've met a few times now over in London when he's training. It was just crazy. And then we were told to go in for the dinner. You know, it was a gala dinner. So I've gone in and I've seen my good friend, Andrew Henderson. Now, Andrew's someone that I'm very close with. He's a football freestyler. He does all the tricks. 5-time world champion. I trained Andrew in boxing. I taught him how to box for quite a few months. Because he was going into the boxing world and he's had a few MMA fights. And he comes up to me and he goes, oh yeah, I know Neymar. He's only there. Let me introduce you to him. He's my good friend. I've worked with him loads of times. So I noticed Neymar, and he just goes over to him, and he goes, yo, Neymar, this is Dan Morley. I was like, mate, sentences you never thought you'd hear muttered. And I went over and had a chat with Neymar. And I wanted to know, I know Neymar likes his boxing. He was obviously at the boxing event. But I asked him about the great Brazilian boxer, Ada Joffrey. He didn't know too much about, to be honest. But, Acelino Popo Freitas, he knew about him. And he was just telling me, probably for a couple of minutes, where he was just standing there, about, his interest in boxing. And yeah, man, it was absolutely insane. And then the London one was pretty much similar, to be honest with you. But there were a lot more fights there. I nodded at Canelo and he nodded back. Had a little chat with Alexander Usyk and just asked who his favourite fighters are. His favourite fight, he said to me, Muhammad Ali. And as a southpaw, he likes Manny Pacquiao too. Had a great chat with Martin Piccoli, who was really friendly, really interested in talking about his sparring as well. He's got all those crazy sparring stories. He reckons the best he's ever sparred is Alexander Usyk, but susceptible to the body shots. And of course, there were the likes of Zhang there as well, who I'm a big fan of. Devin Haney, Beterbiev, who, it's crazy. Honestly, these experiences were so crazy. And, as a boxing fan, firstly, I'm like in heaven in those rooms, It's just every fighter that I want to ask these questions about, how they fought, or it's so cool. So I'm very lucky. I got to say a massive thank you to Rory Lopez, who actually was the reason I got to go to the Ring Magazine event in London. It's in this beautiful old naval building. And yeah, I'm going out to Riyadh in a couple of weeks now to go and see the last crescendo card, which is just an absolutely nuts card. It's, this whole greatest of all time thing that people mention, and the greatest of all time thing is thrown around a lot these days. And they said this card is the greatest card that's ever been put on. And I thought, let me have a little look. There were a few bangers in the 90s. There were some with Chavez on, some with Tyson on, Gerald McClellan, Julian Jackson all on the same card. There was a card in the 20s where Harry Greb was on it, Sam Langford on the undercard, Jack Dempsey headlining. But they were all fights that you would expect them to win. Whereas this one, I genuinely think might be the best card that's ever been put on in history. Because to have Virgil Ortiz against Israel Madrimov, about third on a 7 or 8 fight card, that's just crazy. Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker is a main event anywhere in the world. Beterbiev Bivol 2 is the best fight in boxing still. Zhang versus Caballero. Shiraz fighting Adames for the title. Oh, there's more. It's so stacked. Shakur Stevenson, one of the top pound-for-pound rated fighters in the world. Yeah, it's going to be an unbelievable card. So I'm buzzing to go out there again. And yeah, I just thought I'm very lucky to get out there. I've started to do my media stuff. I'm just so grateful to be able to get these opportunities. And honestly, it's my dream. And yeah, I just thought I would share.